first initial and your last name. And you may need to, I had to reset my password.
Write your name.
But once I did that, then it still didn't work.
I got
So,
that.
You
that's,
have the agenda.
That's the agenda?
This is the agenda from last meeting.
We're going to go ahead and start the meeting.
Can I take a picture of your screen with my phone?
This was the last meeting.
Last meeting's agenda, not this
Yeah,
one.
not
Okay.
this one.
No, I have
You want
this
one?
meeting's agenda.
Yeah, if it's on there.
And just so that everybody knows, this is being recorded. And it's live stream on YouTube.
Not the IT committee.
I've only been a web developer for 15 years.
Thank you, sir.
It's 2018.
All right. So we'll go ahead and kick things off, call the meeting to order, and the first thing we're going to do is set the agenda. So we have the meeting minutes from the last meeting, and
We do?
well,
I can't find them.
no,
we don't.
okay. We may have to defer. Can we just defer the
Yeah,
approval?
we'll table. Yeah, we'll
Okay.
table the minutes.
Okay.
Okay, do we need to make a motion to do that?
Yes.
Okay, I'll make a motion to defer.
Second.
Okay, second. Everybody in favor? We're good. All right.
But we'll vote on them at the next
At
meeting.
the next meeting.
Yeah, okay.
After the March meeting.
And I'd like to make an amendment to the agenda, adding Gas and Gators for a brief presentation
Okay, under public comment.
on the public comment.
Okay.
Yes.
All right.
Do you have a copy of the agenda printed for us since we can't get it?
You, at least, you got a copy of the agenda? Yeah, we thought everybody had it. And I can't get to my phone on it either.
I've got it on the City of Belmont site.
Okay.
Okay, so
Okay.
we need to
Y'all
make
go
a
to
motion
the
for that
city
as
of
well?
Belmont.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'll make the motion to add the Gas and Gators to the public comment.
Second.
All right, great. Everybody good?
Yeah.
All right, that's approved. So, on the agenda, for those who don't have it in front of you, we have public comment first, as always, and then next is an update on the master plan from our partners. We also are going to be hearing an update on Rocky Branch Park, on the Stowe Pavilion discussion, and then a report on programs and events at the end, and then we have a section for other business as well. So that's the order. We're going to go ahead and jump into public comments, so we will turn things over to Gaston Gators.
And actually, I'm representing Gaston Aquatics instead of Gaston.
okay.
Gators. It's a separate 501c3, just for your records.
Okay.
Just to
Gaston
make you know,
Aquatics.
legally speaking, the Gators and Gaston Aquatics have to be separated.
Okay,
Just-
fair enough. We'll make a note.
So, just wanted
Thank
to make
you.
sure you guys know. I am Trey Taylor. I'm the president of Gaston Aquatics. I'm a coach with the Gaston Gators. I serve on a bunch of different aquatics-related boards and things across the nation, across the county, and across the state. And you want me here, podium, just wherever, right? So, just wanted to update you guys a little bit about our project, let you know what we have going, see if there's anything that we can do for you, read you guys in. One of the potential sites that we're looking at is within Belmont city limits. So just wanted to make sure that you guys were read in on everything, and if there's anything that you would like to know or suggestions you'd like to make for us or anything we can do for the community of Belmont. Gaston Aquatics is a 501c3 put together to build a aquatic center in Gaston County. We've worked on this before. We've really re-envisioned it this time, and we're looking at a total aquatic wellness facility. We are already working with some grant programs to do Adult Learn to Swim, which is a Swimming Saves Lives Foundation subsidized program that teaches at-risk adults to swim. It teaches water competency. It's not traditional swim lessons. It's water safety and water competency. It's entirely grant subsidized. It's something we've already got instructors certified for, and we've already been able to train some people for, but it's something we would like to scale up to a much larger extent. As you probably know, Gaston County has a surprisingly large amount of coastline. And North Carolina has one of the highest drowning rates of any of the states in the nation, and our county has tended to be high within North Carolina. So another thing that we would like to remedy. We've already started a pilot program with one of the clusters at Pleasant Ridge Elementary, which I realize is not in Belmont, but we are looking to expand that as time goes on to other elementary schools throughout. We're looking to, using grant subsidies and things like that, be able to teach at-risk kids water competency and water safety. Not just swim lessons. Swim lessons are a traditional thing that have been provided for by many avenues in the county. We are looking to provide water safety, water competency. If someone is not interested per se in, becoming a competitive swimmer, in becoming someone who spends a ton of time around the water in general, we still would like to be able to provide the service to the county so that all of our kids are safe. So that we can, and I know it's a long shot, but I would love for North Carolina to be like Hawaii and make a swim test a graduation requirement. It's a long time future goal, something that's a personal passion of mine. I would just like this to be a very water safe county, and then a water safe state, and then moving forward from there. We envision a 34,600 square foot facility that's at the very back of your packet. You can look at the layout of it, everything like that. It will have a 50-meter competitive pool, which will offer 22.5 lanes of water space, as well as a therapy, wellness, and rehab pool. Those will be, that will be a true 0-degree entry pool, which will allow wheelchairs to go straight into it. Everything like that. There will be no steps, no need for the lifts or anything like that, which can cause anxiety and body issues for a lot of people. And there's a lot of people that actually stay out of the water that have health issues because of the lifts. Frankly, they're just a little embarrassing. Nobody likes being put in like a creature at SeaWorld. It's just not a pleasant thing. So true 0-degree entry of PVC wheelchairs, rolling people in, looking at cardiac rehab, looking at total joint wellness rehab, looking at pediatric therapy, occupational therapy, vertical training for all of our different sports teams in the county. We've spoken with Belmont Abbey. They are interested in bringing back a swim team for the first time since 1990. We have, they have also talked about other, they have triathletes already, but they are looking at water polo. They're looking at other aquatic sports as well. The Gaston Gators would be a tenant there, as well as any of the local high schools that are interested in partnering with us. We would, of course, not try to force anyone out of any relationship that they already have, but we would have space available for anyone that was interested, as well as being able to host meets. A big thing with meets that has come through with USA Swimming and with other entities in the recent future is Safe Sport. Unfortunately, in the sport of swimming and in other sports, there have been some quite horrible people that have come to light, have been involved in it. Safe Sport started in 2010 and has some interesting guidelines for what is actually allowed for certain levels of competition. Namely, spectators are separated from the swimmers. Hence, elevated spectator seating is a requirement for any state level, national level, regional level meet, anything like that. Only background check certified coaches and officials are allowed on the deck with the swimmers. Everyone else is separate from them. For the swimmer's safety, for no pictures being taken behind the brock inappropriately, anything like that. So this facility would have elevated spectator seating and a sloped roof and everything like that. We are not looking to build the Taj Mahal. This is a box. It will be, it will be aesthetically pleasing on the outside, but it is truly functional. It will be locker rooms, some management offices, and it will be the pool. And it will have aquatic opportunities for everyone. It will be reasonably priced. The price to build compared to other options that have been brought forth in this county before would be a lot more reasonable. The cost to operate would be a lot more reasonable, and the membership costs will be reasonable, as well as all the grant programs that we're looking at through all the programs we're doing to subsidize it. So in general, we're just looking to provide aquatic solutions for things that are missing in this county. There's been an aquatic hole, and there's actually a map in that packet as well that shows where all the 50-meter pools and the competition facilities are in the state. And generally speaking, we draw from Blue Ridge Swim League, which is the Gaston Gators are part of, draw from as far west as right at the Tennessee border. And a lot of those people are happy to come to Shelby, happy to come there. They don't like going to Charlotte. They don't want to go all the way across the river. We could bring a lot of the meets that are hosted for that here. A lot of that could come into the county. If you look, there's also economic impact assessment numbers in there. Gaston Gators host 2 home meets a year right now in Huntersville. We pay Huntersville $15,000 every time we do that for a weekend. So that's money gone from the county right there, as well as each swimmer under 12 on average brings 1 and a half to 2 people with them to a meet. Each swimmer 13 and over brings 1 to 1 happy with them for meet. You're figuring meals for those 2 people. If they're coming from more than an hour away, they're generally staying in a hotel, anything like that. All that money is going out of our county. That could all be helping our local businesses, our local restaurants, our local hotels. In general, we are looking to fill a need that we feel has been long missing in Gaston County, and we're just looking for as much support as we can get from the county to make this a reality. I would be happy to answer any questions that anyone has and anything else I can do for you.
So the location is TBD, you haven't secured?
We have 2 potential locations we're negotiating with both of them. Both along I-85, one within the city of Belmont, one within the city of Gastonia. They have both asked at the moment that we not say, but you can probably figure it out.
Okay. What other questions?
What would you like from us?
We would love, even a letter of support would be wonderful. We're not asking for financing or anything like that. I would just like Belmont to know that we are doing this for the whole county. If we end up in the city of Belmont, that's great, but we have a lot of our swimmers come from Belmont.
Oh, yeah, I know.
Absolutely, and we have, there's a lot of elementary schools in Belmont that could be served by our pilot programs that we're working on, everything like that. So I just want everyone to know what we're doing. We don't want to be doing this in the dark, quietly, sneakily. We want to be out there, get as much support as we can from the community, and try to make this a great thing for the community.
So I have a question.
Sure.
Are you looking to do this on your own? Are you looking for a partner to build a facility, or what exactly are you saying?
We're fundraising this on our own. We're privately fundraising this. Land partnerships we would never say no to with anyone. We're talking with 2 entities, but we would never say no to any land partnerships as we're going forward. But we are privately funding this. We have already secured some pledges towards it, a significant amount actually, that we're working toward. But we're not looking to government fund it or anything like that. We want this to be by the community for the community.
So you want a motion from us that,
I would love a letter of support.
so do we have to make a motion then? So
You can make the motion.
you have to make the motion. So the motion is that we provide a letter of support for this, of the aquatic center. Right?
Do you have an estimate on timing?
From the moment we secure the land, it would take about 18 months.
Okay, so relatively fast.
Yes, ma'am.
So the reason that I asked that is, one of the big projects that we're trying to push forward as a board is, and we kind of use gymnasium, but that's a broad statement around more like a community center and that kind of thing, and we're right now doing some studies on what does that include, what does it not include, does it include a pool, that kind of thing. So if your timeline was a little longer, I was thinking perhaps it might be an opportunity to blend the two, but I don't know if, the timing would work out there.
Well, we're happy to discuss anything.
Yeah, well, we're a long ways off from that,
Understand,
frankly.
yeah.
We've got a long way to go before we get there, and we have no funding and no real plan yet, so. Since you have funding.
I'm happy to hear that something's happening. That's wonderful. Anything that we can get in this county to move this county forward is a wonderful thing.
Yeah, well, if you were like in the baby stages or pre-baby stages, then maybe that would be something to look at. But I think it seems like I'm seeing head nods that we're generally in support, and, so.
Yeah, go ahead.
Do we have a second?
I think I'm close. You mentioned one of your goals is to help teach people to swim.
Yes.
So down the road, buildings built, some. What would a program like that look like to bring some local people in to learn how to swim, or teach kids to swim? Or I used to live near the Hot Hole, and unfortunately there have been a lot of accidents there over the years, drowning and jet ski type events. So I'd be interested in.
I actually lost a friend to a rope swing at the Hot Hole.
Yeah.
So I get that.
Yeah.
We partnered with a couple of local entities already, specifically Jack and Jill we have talked with, and they have a transportation and fundraising budget that they've already got. So we would hopefully, once we get a facility open and we're not just doing a pilot anymore, we would love to, working with them and the Boys and Girls Club to really reach at-need kids through grant programs and through that funding subsidy and things like that to get them to the pool. And then we would have pretty small instructor classes, no more than about 4-on-1 teaching water competency and safety, and provide that, and then be able to, just funnel them through in a couple of, multiple hour sessions. After school or during summer or just whenever it works best for the kids, honestly.
And so you'd be open to the public for?
Yes.
You'd have memberships?
Absolutely.
I'm assuming. So I guess I would just want us to maybe stay in close alignment with you moving forward, because, right, we're trying to decide, should we have a pool in the center? And I would hate for us to put a pool in that's duplicative, especially if you're in Belmont. And just making sure that we really understand that and are partnering well. Would you be open, if you ended up in Belmont, to any sort of discounted memberships or for city residents if we ended up not putting, because I don't think, if you end up in Belmont, it doesn't make sense for us to have a pool in a community center.
We would,
Different.
and it could be a different type of facility, especially if you're looking at like an outdoor pool in a community center or something, would serve a different need. However, absolutely, we would be willing to look at, for city residents, a discounted membership rate or something like that, especially if we could, or we are a nonprofit, so we wouldn't need tax credits or anything like that, but if we could, work out any kind of in-kind services for the city in exchange for discounted memberships, we would absolutely be open to any partnership like that.
Do we have a second?
I got a question, but I'm trying to phrase it the right way. So, the way I gather it, you're looking to some degree to partner with or to provide a service to the city of Belmont. How do you envision seeing something through Parks and Rec?
If City of Belmont through Parks and Rec was interested in partnering with us on some land, we would definitely be interested in that. Like I said, we've got 2 potential sites now that if we went ahead and closed on them, we'd move forward, but we are not turning anyone down that is interested in a potential partnership. We're not saying no to anyone right now, but, we would, in any way we could, serve whatever, we want to serve the whole county, of course, but we would definitely, whatever city specifically we end up with, we would want to partner with them to an even deeper level for specific programs and things like that, not for funding, for things like that.
That's what I was getting at, is you was obviously talking about the swim program for the seniors and what have you, so.
Yes.
Let me make a comment. The reason why we're doing the master plan is to evaluate what we need is this new proposed rec center.
Yes.
And one of the other components could be a swimming pool. And we should have that information in July, August, right? The master plan is done, and we're gonna submit that to city council. So we're not only doing baby steps, we're gonna be further advanced in July, August, and probably asking for the potential for a gymnasium at that time to fund that facility. So we're a little bit ahead of the game than what we said before.
Well,
So
we've
we can
already
keep
done,
that.
have we done the inventory of both public and private facilities right now?
That'll come in the master study when they do their final report. That's what these guys are
Okay,
doing.
I didn't know if we'd done the inventory. What's that?
Right now, it stands at 0
Yeah.
The why?
as a quasi-public facility, but it doesn't offer a competition type atmosphere for them.
Well, what about Pine Brook? We have Pine Brook right over here. That's,
Don't have it away.
and then you got swim teams that compete there. A lot of guys, people swim
Summer
at
League.
Pine Brook and some swim
That's-
for the Gators.
It's a great funnel
both
program.
places,
Summer
so,
League is,
I didn't know if it had, Pine Brook had got on that inventory or not.
But he's talking about a private,
Right.
like a much larger pool,
It's
with a
much
cover.
larger, right.
That they use to,
I know.
365 days a year.
I know,
Use it
when my kids swam at Pine Brook,
Lauren swam there too.
we went to Huntersville to compete.
Yeah, exactly.
So, I mean,
away from the check.
We did that too, yeah. So yours is really different than the Just Stay community pool. I mean, this is different, so you
Well,
have
what would be a
like
community pool?
well, it's 22 lanes.
Right.
So like any pool that we put in to like a rec center is not going to be 22 lanes and a massive pool, so this is really different.
And that's why we'd need a partner, that's why he's talking about the partnership
Right,
aspect of it.
exactly.
Yeah.
Which I get, yeah.
Yeah, that's what, I feel like I'm kind of just struggling a little bit, because I think in an ideal world, and I get 100% of your timeline is different than ours, but I think in an ideal world, you know, if you ended up in Belmont, it would be great if we could just combine the two and partner together, because I think when we're looking at funders, if you're building it in Belmont, you're gonna be looking for some of those same private funders, and there's definitely the potential there for competition and, you know, for a less than collaborative experience on both of our parts. So, I mean, that's a statement really more than anything, but, you know, not that I don't support it, I just think.
Oh, and we're
It may not be the
certainly
most
not trying to
popular way
steal
to run it.
funding from anybody else.
Yeah.
There's a lot of great projects
vice
going on in the
versa.
county.
Yeah.
And we're not,
And I just want to, the high schools do compete at the Y. I didn't know if you was aware of it or not, but the local high schools are competing at the Y, so, yeah,
mostly this year, they're competing at Kings Mountain High
Yeah.
School.
okay.
They're competing out of county mostly.
Oh, really?
I know South Point
But
have been.
They practice there, generally still now.
I know the competitions were there.
They do a limited amount there now, but they have pushed most of them off onto Kings Mountain since Kings Mountain came back into Big South 3A.
Oh, okay.
Just,
We're not 3A no more, we're 2A.
Well, that's right, and South Point now is not, and a lot of those have gone to, over to the pool near Lake Norman Charter, which is also,
I'd like to clarify something.
Sure, absolutely.
And I think it's implicit in your name, Gaston Gators. This is a Gaston County project, right? Not something where you're looking to pick a city and be a city service only. So this would be,
this is a county project, but
County.
wherever we make a home, like I said, we would be absolutely looking to make deeper partnerships within our direct local community there.
gotcha.
So we don't want to lock anybody out.
Right, so you're looking to serve the county and trying to find the right place within the county to do
Yes.
that. Okay.
We're trying to find a place that serves us best in terms of grant funding and everything. So, you know, associated economic zip code unfortunately makes a big difference when it comes to grant funding. And then there's also the draw of, you know, a lot of, you know, the people that we draw for the Gators and for Masters and for competition swimming comes from a completely different type, you know, area. So we're trying to balance both of those and be in an area that we can be easily accessible to as many people as possible, right along the interstate.
With that in mind, I would probably second your motion, and I'd also encourage you to follow what we're doing with our master plan development, because some of the insights that we're going to be gaining over the next few weeks will probably directly impact your own goals and stuff like that, so.
Absolutely, I'd love to hear it.
So we have a second. We'll call for vote.
Okay, all right, everybody in favor?
Aye.
Everybody good? All right.
I got a question before we end this. On your facility, I think you said something about some of your membership, 35,000 square feet. How much land are you potentially looking for?
We would need for just the facility proper, if we had some sort of a shared parking arrangement, we would just need an acre. You know, an acre is 42,000 roughish square feet. So, you know, if we to do a few designated parking spots for, you know, employees and things like that within the acre, but then if we were able to partner with some sort of shared parking arrangement also, that would save us a lot of land space. If we had to do all of our own parking and everything, we would need closer to 2.5 acres. But we are hoping, and one of the sites that we're looking at, that is a potential that we would only need the acre and we could do a shared parking partnership.
How much water would be required for some, I'm thinking, you know, it wasn't so long ago, we were, you know, starting to run out of water in Belmont during the drought for that 5-year stretch, and.
Well, to fill it, it will come in on trucks.
Okay.
They fill, we initially fill pools with trucks, pH balance
Okay.
water, that comes on trucks. There would be fill coming in. We count as 6 houses. We already had Two Rivers Credit do a residential equivalency unit for us.
Okay.
With our locker rooms and our bathrooms and everything, we are the equivalent of 6 houses. With all of our toilets and showers and everything like that. And we would be at relatively off-peak times, very early in the morning before the general get ready for work rush, and then in the evening, you know, after people have already gotten home from work would be our heaviest load times. So we are not that public utilities heavy.
Okay, so we don't like have to send out an emergency letter to the water department.
Yeah.
saying, "Get ready for-"
We talked to them and told them, you know, we went ahead and got rated with the schematics that we had and everything, because, you know, one of the sites that we looked at before was where they're working on that, and they know they're gonna need that new pumping station. We're not looking at that site now, but, you know, they did panic a little bit. We're like, you know, we're not gonna flush 1 million gallons, it's okay. if I ever have to flush the pool, we've got much worse problems than sewer capacity.
Well, thank you for this.
Thank
This
you.
is really interesting.
You are quite welcome.
It's exciting.
And if there's anything that you ever, need for us, we're at GastonAquatics.org. You can link right to my email there. And I believe it's in that packet as well. And if anyone needs my phone number or anything, I'm happy to answer any questions moving forward. I really appreciate you guys' time. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, Trey.
You're very welcome.
Thank you.
So as an action item, how, do you want me to take a crack at drafting the letter and
Yeah.
then send it out and everybody can just kind of edit it from there? Does that work?
You're the writer of the group,
Yeah.
yes.
All right. I'll make that.
Yeah, please.
And then Zip, is that do you need to review it and sign off on it too, or is it strictly from the board?
That's really from the board.
Okay,
To you.
Yeah, send to me,
okay.
Did we show hands?
Yeah.
Everybody vote on, everybody?
Unanimous.
Unanimous, okay, for letter of support.
Yep. Let the record show.
I think it would also be great to have y'all back, whenever, as this is developing, to just kind of inform us of how your progress is going too.
I would be absolutely happy to come anytime.
Okay.
Yeah, we may have some more information too later on down the road.
Yeah.
Earlier on down the road, I say, not later.
It won't be long.
Yeah.
Couple exits up.
Okay, up next on the agenda is an update on the master plan.
All right. Throwing Carl up, I'm sorry.
Yeah, when you need packets.
Here we go.
You found them?
Oh, we need to, everybody needs to initial that that they're here, also.
Okay, so, today's meeting is really more about looking back at what we've accomplished in the last really week with our focus group meetings and so forth. Your big packets. We'll let you go. There's two here. So, all we have is a basic agenda and some text on what we started with on the, I want to give you one on the notes.
The master
Copious,
copy.
I was taking copious notes of what Trey was going through. And,
That would be fantastic.
yeah, that was pretty great. Yeah, thanks. There you go. And I know, Katie sat, you guys were at one of the focus group meetings the other day. So today's agenda is basically, we're just gonna go through the plan progress. I don't know whether Katie already sent around, whether we're here, who's in attendance. You can
She
either
sent-
sign in
she's-
or we can give you the
She got it.
roster and let you check.
You got it already.
The text is the first 6 pages of what is the intro to the document as an executive summary. And then on the back side of our agenda, we did give you some information on population that we had done with planning department staff and let them run through. So the biggest thing to talk about is, in the population data, if we look into what we're doing for demographics, what we're really considering is, what is it our total population ends up? The only thing that it really affects at this point is when you're dealing with statistical items that deal with facilities. Okay? They're not super great things to go into, but if you think about it, Belmont's growing almost double what the county is. Okay? And much of that influence is your location to the airport, your location to Charlotte, et cetera, et cetera. Probably nothing, it's pretty self-evident, it's probably why you might even live here. So basically, the projection for 2019 is we're around 11,800 people. Okay? By the time we end this plan in 10 years, we're maybe 14,300. Even if we were projecting slightly higher, we're probably only going to add at maximum, maybe 250 to 400 people to that total number. So you might end up around 14,700. But I don't see you growing that fast, and I think the planning department thought that too. because they came back and said, yeah, we think going this way is about on track. We agree with what you're doing. So we're going to use those numbers that we have here. Anything that I told Melissa that if we needed to discuss them further, you know, if they change slightly, it won't affect the plan drastically, because those are the items that are statistically driven with acreage possibly based on standards like your old plan or number of facilities. To give you an idea, if you had an additional 500 people in this community, it might affect, like you would say, maybe half a park, or it might affect that you might need some more open space based on a standard of X number of acres per people. And to give you an idea, at 1,000 people, you run around 10 acres, just on average. So, depending on neighborhood space, etc. So, it's good to know where we're moving to and who we are and what we're composed of. The most interesting thing that I found is, you know, how we're growing and age. North Carolina's aging fast, just about like everybody. But surprisingly, Belmont is older than the county in terms of median age, and older than the median age for the state, which was kind of a surprise to me in looking at it, because I would have thought the trend right now would be younger people moving across the river because of the amenities that we see. So that was kind of surprising in a trend that I saw in the population. The other trend with population that was maybe a little bit different, which would deal with programs that you might serve, age, is we're going to see it when we go through some of the survey data, but that could be just because we only have 74 surveys in there. And I haven't been able to cross-tab. Well, what will happen is, as soon as you have your first public meeting, you'll get a spike in that return on your investment, if you will, on how many people will contact the survey. And then it will really die out again. So right now, we're probably back to a dead zone, because the first notice that got put out was probably the people who usually monitor the city's website and saw that there was a link. Plus, any people that Parks and Rec deals with got people to go and take the survey. So we'll see how the survey goes through March. We need to look at, you know, planning our public meeting for the end of March and April. We can talk about that later. When it comes to land use, I'm not trying to recreate a land use plan within this document. We're trying to basically identify barriers to what services are provided by the city. That would include all types of services, but, you know, I think everyone here knows what those barriers are. The physical barriers of water to the east, water to the west, and then highways to the north that kind of make the northern part of the city feel like their stepchildren. So there we go. I mean, that's in a nutshell what I've described.
It's true.
Okay? Yeah, I mean, and at a couple of our meetings, you know, that's not new. Even before 85 was completely done, and you spoke with people who lived there all their lives, Wilkinson, 74, was the issue then. And it still is, because it's hard to get across when you got 8 lanes.
Train tracks becoming that way now between.
Well, that's another one. The train tracks that go through the city, right? You're an old industrial town that had a center core industrial complex on a river. Right? So you've got trails or spur lines all over the place, which could be an advantage if the rail services would allow you to use them, which, you know, that there was a trend, rails to trails, etc. There's some horror stories about rails to trails because they really didn't relinquish 100% of rights to those rail right-of-ways. And after improvements were made, they're saying, hey, you know, we want to use them again. The famous thing that happened, I guess, happened in Brooklyn with some streetcar right-of-ways, which were private at the time. rails to trails use them. And they failed to get it back, the rail ownerships, whoever bought these companies later. But regardless, those are the other barriers. And those are the ones that limit you with access primarily to the Catawba, is where they make it difficult for people to cross again. So I think that talks a little bit about land use, and you'll see we just briefly run into that in the plan. I did have a chance to really read some of the city planning document and also the document that was done for the feasibility study by the university, by UNCC. This was done real well, in my opinion. There's information in here that's applicable to what we're doing now. And one of the recommendations they made was to update this plan, number one. It was right there. So, yeah, there's some good information. With the site inventories and reviews, this gentleman's put together a form for us to use right now, but some of the things that he's not going to have are the sites like you were talking about, private or quasi-public locations that need to be evaluated and how they affect. I'll throw my 2 bits in about swimming. Swimming, because of its nature and service of large populations, typically isn't something a town of 11,000 people tries to provide. They usually try to provide it with partners. Maybe they are partners who are in the aquatics business, or maybe they are typically, as we find in North Carolina, schools. I'm familiar with what happened on the other side of the river before the aquatic center in Huntersville. And my children, it was tough. Whenever you know that gym time is going past or to 11 o'clock, or like ice is up north, where they're playing hockey at midnight because there's nowhere else to do it and no time. Well, when swimming's starting at 8 o'clock for the last practice, when they started the first practice, and I'll just say Providence High School down in South Mecklenburg was the first practice. And the last practice would be finished at 9, 10 p.m. So that tells you that it's not unique. It is everywhere. But I think the pools, the aquatics features that maybe get entered into with a rec center or so forth, this is the time to discuss. And when you start to look at competition, and I heard 50 meter, right? And when you're talking about a 50-meter indoor facility, as opposed to long course outdoor, which is the nearest thing, I guess, for that would be a show. It's difficult because you can run most of your competition levels for a short course season without 50 meters, but there are other things that go on within an aquatics facility than just the competition. So I won't do your design over or whatever, but yeah, there needs to be an open dialogue, and I think it's great that you have that. I don't know whether the recommendations out of this plan would be specifically to say, hey, you do a 25-meter pool, that you decide how you program it when you do your programming for your recreation center. I don't think that's going to happen. I think that has to happen for the absolute program for a rec center. I think what you'll get out of this plan is that, and we're already hearing it, is that you definitely have support you need for a rec center. So I kind of jumped through a lot of things. Let's talk about inventory. I visited the sites. I did it on a Saturday, in fact, which was good in that, one, the weather was good. Two, when I went to a few sites, I noticed how lack of indoor facilities was evident. So when I got up to what is it, I gotta remember, North Belmont Elementary, I guess it is, it may be middle. But you got middle and elementary, and then the field in between in the church, Four Corners Church right there. All those parking lots and streets were full because those are the only gyms, right? To use, and everybody was there who was playing. Now, I guess you don't do a program at the, I guess it's the elementary.
It wasn't, everything was at Foursquare.
Okay, at Foursquare that day. But there were cars parked there. And I know they have maybe it's a multi-purpose room/gym. So I could tell that that's probably one of the lacking items in the town. And that was evident just the way the cars were parking on Saturday for the events that were going on. Overall, almost every site, all the sites I went to were in good condition. Many were in excellent, very good to excellent condition. And a lot of that has to do because some of them are new. For instance, the newer sites like Gant Soccer, the play area, and parking improvements that were done at Davis, all that were positive that had gone on. The courts at Reed, even the parking at Reed, the field in general with new lighting and so forth, relatively new lighting, I guess, was in good shape on the upper field, but yes, at Reed, the lower field, okay, we need to see what it's used for and how it's used. Evident from all of the places I went to, and then later found in our focus group meetings, is restrooms and picnic shelters. And I noticed that at the two parks in general were Reed and Davis, that I was like, lack of shelter. Now I know with the field, there's a restroom facility at Davis and that type of thing. And then seeing at the tennis, there were some people getting ready to, I don't know whether you're doing a clinic or something that Saturday for tennis. But I also found out that pickleball is being decided on for the two back courts, which makes a lot of sense. Unfortunately, people who play pickleball and people who play tennis, I hear don't get along. I don't know what that's about, but okay. There are some improvements that probably are necessary with the tennis courts and that. Most of that dealing with the walls that surround there and also the court surfaces. Lack of vandalism was something that I noticed, and actually that's a positive sign on the community. It shows the value they place on parks, or the value they place on who they know who works for parks. Vice versa, there's personal relationship there that seems to be well respected for the city. I've definitely seen towns with worse conditions in terms of vandalism. Your Central Park, I guess, Stowe. I think the one thing there that I know about is there are improvements already in place, dealing with the stage to better suit the amphitheater and the activities that go on there. So that's something we'll write into the plan, and that's a great idea. It is needed, from what I can see, how special facilities takes over the park. Ford Center limitations. I think we knew going in that it's an outdated old facility. It's used basically for some minor dance classes and some physical instruction. Seniors use it for their meetings. One of the things that I heard in our focus groups and also experienced by going to the parking lot and looking at the old spur line that's right in the backyard is, you know, if old people are coming here and I'm getting there, seems like there might be a better barrier back there by the parking lot. Davis Park probably needs some architectural upgrades and some field repairs. Fencing was, you can see where it's aging, I guess is the best way to put it. We've already went through Davis Tennis, Lofton Park. One of the things at Lofton is I was there and there happened to be a lot of open houses going on the street. and people were pointing all over the place, and I guess my wife was sitting in the car, and she goes, there are a lot of people who are interested in whatever you were doing down there in Lofton on the walkway. She goes, what's back there? And I said, well, there's a walkway, and it's in a drainage area. It's really just open space. I have no idea why they're interested in what I'm doing, but, yeah, at Linford. So, at Linford, one of the things I noticed there is, as a little small open space buffer and probably a drainage area for the city to monitor, there might be a way to work in some type of play apparatus, or maybe it occurs up where the gazebo is around the corner, but that's only on like a quarter acre. But you might be able to get some play activities, because the north side of the city seems to be the most underserved in terms of some parks, let alone way south where you have new subdivisions. Rodden Field probably was in the worst condition, but that's primarily due to what I saw was the lighting poles, I think you're all aware of, had shattered and splintered apart, came down. So they were still there, and I take it that they'll be removed eventually. Gansoccer was in really good shape. I was very surprised because usually the first weeks of February are when club teams start practices and so forth, and I was surprised that it wasn't going on that Saturday, which could mean they could be at the coast, they could be anywhere. But usually it's that time of year that some club teams start to play, and I was kind of surprised there was no one there. And then we already talked about Linford. Now we can turn to focus groups, which were done on the 14th on Valentine's Day. At this point, we haven't done all of the, if you want to call them meeting minutes that we'll use for the appendices of the report. But what we did was went through quickly to see what were the most common items that came within the 7 focus groups. By the way, having 7, we'll call them 7 meetings because we were in the same room, but we had 2 groups going on at the same time. But there were 7 meetings, there were 31, not 34 representatives. And for a town this size, that's pretty good input. To give you an idea, we've worked with the city of Burlington, which is probably what, 2.5 times, 3 times in population, and we did not get 31 participants in theirs, in the last most recent town of Pineville, which is probably smaller. We didn't have that type of participation. The church groups, naturally the Gas and Gators were there. We listed them. We had some school AVs. So we had representative from kind of a cross section. My guess is, without going through the numbers yet, we just haven't had the time to go through them all. Well over 1,000 people were probably represented by those 31 people because of church groups, schools, the park and rec people. I don't know whether you can really say they represent a large population, but we're going to find out, and we'll put a number to it in the report. So some of the things that came out consistent, besides just needing an indoor gym recreation facility, also came across as multi-generational. In other words, we're going to take people from the crib. I hate to say you're not going to take them to the grave, but the object is to cover all the age groups, and that's what we heard. So that reinforces what was in the recreation feasibility study and the surveys they have done. There was a lot of talk about people walking, if you will, and walking for exercise, walking for enjoyment, and then walking from point A to point B, and the lack of connectivity. And that's, again, nothing that's not just unique to Belmont. It's unique throughout North Carolina in general and in this region. I think it's unique to a lot of cities that developed through the 60s as opposed to long ago when you had more traditional neighborhoods and lack of sidewalks weren't as evident. Restroom facilities, I kind of hinted on when we were going through, was something that I think that was brought up in the meetings. Play areas at some parks need improvement and for various age groups. And the comment that came to me kind of surprised me because it came from two different sources in the meetings, but two dealt with Reed, just saying, there needs to be more varied age groups and structure there. But the other one dealt with Davis, and I was like, Davis had a pretty diverse section, so I'm wondering whether they truly meant it was Reed. Or maybe my note is incorrect, that could be too. Restroom facilities we talked about. There was talk about access to water and drinking fountains, and I noticed when I was visiting is that a lot of the parks have the old faucet hydrant method of getting water to, where your jug fillers, for a lack of a better term, as opposed to all drinking fountains. Now, I'm sure Stowe, I don't recall it at Davis, but that seemed to be a comment that came back is, it'd be nice to have drinking fountains and access to water. They don't, I think the old hydrant methods weren't something people approve of, you might say. Seniors talked about improving the Ford Center. There's also talk about, what do you do with it if something else comes online, like the recreation center, and how do you repurpose it, or do you repurpose it? The seniors said they understand the limitations that they're under where they meet there. And the one thing that they even talked about is needs for, better accommodations dealing with tables, even, they talked about fridge and kitchen, because I guess it's been on and off. And then we had a giant coffee debate, because I guess they weren't getting coffee, or they were getting coffee at one time, then we weren't getting coffee. But that's fine. Improvement and disabled access at parks. There has been some initiative that I noticed by seeing the parking spaces and so forth, especially like at Davis. Also, they're identified at Reed, but it's more difficult at Reed because of how the trail system works there. But I think it's something that you still need to evaluate further. I think it also helps for other parts of the city and the community, as we heard from Holy Angels and so forth, who have many disabled people. And then the partnerships came up in the churches, county parks, sports clubs, all were viable things that people came up. There were two groups that brought up, that I recall in there, about team programming and facilities. They felt there was a lack of service for that, I'll just call it a 15-year-old. Because I think especially it might be a 15-year-old who's maybe not active in sports or active in some type of arts program or other activities that seems that's the type of programming or facility that's needed for those age groups.
That's fair. It's very fair.
Yeah, and then, they talked about funding. Everyone was on board with bonds, of course. They always think that bonds are free. I don't know why, but you gotta pay them down the line.
Yeah.
And everyone says, there's a sugar daddy out there in the corporate land. Right?
Yeah.
So, but surprisingly, they were okay knowing that fees help to balance out things, as long as fees don't prohibit people from participating. So that's how we talked about the funding.
What is this downtown space for arts?
I don't know. I had that note, and someone talked about, I don't know whether it came from what you do with Stowe when they have the Garibaldi Festival and art is out and all that kind of stuff. I don't know whether that's what it came from.
Okay.
What about
I
the
have to look
splash
in the
pad?
minutes.
And
It did
the
come up.
swim?
It came up more with,
What's that?
well, they said develop a swim facility too.
Right.
Or at least a splash pad. That
Which
came up
group
in
was that?
morning group at 9, and actually a senior group who took the same person and we talked about the teens.
Oh, okay.
So now I'm going to go through, because I only have raw data on the survey. It hurts, because when you don't have crosstabs already put together, it comes out pretty bold. And I know I didn't have a chance to talk with Cassidy and maybe get something done. But right now we have 74 surveys, and I'll just run through a list or spew out a bunch of facts that I see. And right now, almost 65% of the people who are filling out the survey are female. That's not uncommon, but that's high. Average household, I don't know at this point, but my guess is it'll probably fall within 3. Just because that's about where we land in communities this size, and the other would be, if you look at statistics, 2.3 is about what a average household is. How many persons in your household by age group? This was interesting. The 2 largest groups, 35 to 44 and 45 to 54, that's not uncommon. Those are middle-aged people, probably have a house and home.
Can you say that again? 35 to 40?
Yeah, I mean, these will be available on the site, and I don't know whether you really want to have everybody going in there to look at the facts, but to give you an idea right now where we stand, if you were to take an age group of 35 to 44 and then 45 to 54, right? They make up close to 80% of the households that have done this survey. And I wouldn't say that's uncommon, because adults, we might say, because we're also asking about those with children. The correlation between the two is that, so when we look at 25, if we start to go back to maybe an age group of 25 to 34, and then include them, 35 to 44, kind of in a pack, we're talking about the same number, the same 80-some%. But what we're really saying is that how many in their household are under 10? So they're parents. And what we're saying is they're about 68, so somewhere in between there, if you will, right? We could almost do a correlation that 70% of the people who filled this out had children that were in those age groups. So that, when we talk about activities, and I haven't gone through them all because they're graphic right now, as opposed to doing the crosstabs, I didn't see leisure activities and recreation programs. Do you and others in your household participate regularly? And basically saying, did we get 30%, 40%, or 50% responses? Those that were over 50%, festival events, imagine that, right? It was really high, almost might even be number 1 at 50-some%. Playground use, hiking and walking, those are all real high uses. And that's not abnormal for almost any plant. Typically some people do walking and jogging, tend to be very high, and they fall in the 50% to 60%, with fitness and so forth coming like under that to say they participate often. So we'll do the crosstabs on that, but with only 74 people, it's hard to say. What are the 4 activities and recreation programs listed that you and your members participated in the most often? And we gave them 1 is the most often, 2nd most often, 3rd most often. Walking, playground use, jogging, running were the top 3 right now that I can kind of decipher in this format. And that's not uncommon. So what we may find is when we get into seconds and thirds, It's whether, how far they kind of move around the top three as first choice. Whether the top three are always in the top three, I guess is the best way to put it, to say how strong or what people do. What of you or members of your household participated in any recreation programs offered by the city of Belmont during the past 12 months? Only 52% said yes, 31% no, but they're aware of the activities, which is good. And then the remainder no, because I don't know, which is 16, which isn't, I guess, off the charts or out of normal. Have you or members of your household visited, I think we were asking about the center and city parks in this past year, almost 82% roughly visited the parks. Which park or facility in Belmont do you visit the most often? Stowe, number 1, no doubt. Davis, number 2. Lofton, number 3, from what I can decipher without doing the cross-tab. How would you rate the physical condition of all the parks? 71% rate them good to excellent. So you heard me say it, but I thought they weren't good, and many were excellent. They're saying it too. That's good to see. Now, again, we're only at 74. From the following list, check all the organizations that you and members of your household use within the Belmont area for recreation parks, programs, and facilities. And this was to see who else, as a provider, they use. You know, for instance, they go to state parks. Do they use church facilities? Do they use the Y? Local school sites, they feel those as recreational sites. Whether they use Gaston County facilities or other town facilities, those are in there. Number 1 was the people who use the state parks, so there seems to be maybe an outdoor recreational component from people who have answered, since they're using state parks. Next was participants who were at the Y, and then churches. And I would think that many of, because of you use church facilities for gyms, may have some influence on that. Which of the following types of parks and recreational facilities in Belmont have you and others in your household visited or used during the past 2 years? Number 1, people said walking trails. I wonder if we were asking the question whether they were the trails that are marked on the city maps for fitness. I don't know if you're aware of those maps. Whether it was those or actually going to like the walking trail that's at Reed or even at Davis or so on and so forth. I couldn't even do a quick tab on that when I got it. So, on that question. Do you think that well-maintained parks enhance the property value of your surrounding homes? Almost 96% say yes. So, I don't know whether we have positive park people or positive financially thinking people, but it used to be a point where people really thought that, especially active neighborhood parks is the way to put it, were a detriment to your economic well-being. I mean, there were public meetings I would sit in and said, don't you dare put that thing next to me. That tells you some changed attitudes. How do you perceive the adequacy of city facilities listed below? I mean, we listed a bunch of things of walking, jogging, playgrounds, water access, soccer fields, et cetera, et cetera. Number 1 in meets my needs is, I believe it was the playgrounds. And then surprisingly, and I put a big question mark here, picnic shelters was very high. Benches and sitting areas for people watching, and I think that has a lot to do with Stowe and downtown. And then people are so-so about sports fields. On soccer fields, they feel pretty well served, since I think Gant is a new facility and they see those as being used. But they see baseball, softball in a different light, not doing as well. The follow-up to that question is, now that you've identified those areas that don't meet your need, or meet your needs, which do not adequately meet your needs, which are the most needed in your specific neighborhood or area? I haven't been able to cross-tab that yet. What types of facilities would you like to see added? There's a big list, but splash pad came up 1, 2, 3, 4, just on this first page, out of 30 people 4 times, 5 times, 6 times that I see real quick. So 10% of them were out there. The other one, a water park, they worded it differently on me, so you can include it that way. Other things that I see, it seems, typically you would find that there would be more answers talking about walking paths or trails, because no matter, I haven't found a community we worked in that walking greenways aren't always like #1 in the list. Thinking about the area in which you live, do you think that your area has adequate facilities compared to other areas of the city? It's split. It's 50-50 right now. At 37%, there are a lot of people undecided. 24% of the answers. So, I don't know, 1/4 of 70, I can't even think about that. That's why it's 16, 17 people. But 37% of these people are split. They're not sure of whether they're served well or not.
Are you able to show those responses by where they live?
No, I don't think we had any GIS input. Yeah. No, that'd be scary, wouldn't it?
Well, I mean, I think that would be
But you
helpful to
can't-
know if they're saying,
Sure,
I
sure.
don't feel like my
but-
area is
but-
adequately served.
And I'd be kind of scared of geo-positioning on people, I suppose. I guess you could ask it.
Like in general
Yeah, you could
areas,
ask
like
general.
North Belmont, you know.
I'm just not sure we need that accuracy. It'd be great. I bet you Amazon knows.
It's already shipping to you now.
Please indicate how you perceive
Here's your
the
new card.
adequacy of the recreation programs listed below by selecting the appropriate box. And I think the whole thing here was trying to find available but inadequate for my needs. You know, is find out what people are feeling is truly leaving a bad taste in their mouth, if you will. You know, what is it that I feel you're not doing? The other is, if you are doing something well, stop doing it. So a good example of that is the outdoor concert series. People are pretty happy, meets my needs. Special events falls into that. Where it says it's not is, you know, gyms. What else we got here? Real low in terms of swim facilities. And shoosh. Trying to make sure all 74 answer before I make a kind of a quick judgment. Seems like some outdoor education things they feel aren't being fulfilled in the area. Maybe they do. They could be expectations on the city to do them, with maybe not having the understanding that most of those are provided, you know, through Gaston or even the city of Gastonia's nature museum. I'm almost there, guys. Hang on. Are the other recreation programs in which you would participate? I need more tab information on that one. To which of the following private recreation facilities do you belong? I think what we see is, number one is the Y is way up there. 36% of the people belong to the Y. 31% belong to a club, fitness or health club, excuse me. 33% feel they get facilities through the church. And then I do not belong to any private recreation follows that at 28%. So right now, I'd have to look at previous tabs in other communities to see how that kind of balances out and what that means. Thinking about the area where you live, do you believe that your area has adequate park and recreation programs? No, my area does not have adequate park and recreation programs available. Slightly over 1/3 of the people who did it said that. Now, contrast to that, 48% said yes, my area has adequate programs. But that's a relatively high amount, 30-something%. In your opinion, how important is the contribution of Parks and Recreation to the quality of life in Belmont? That's typically from important to very important, 99%. So the values of the community, at least these 74 households, answering for them. Compared to other priorities in Belmont, how important do you think it is for the city to fund improvements for Parks and Recreation over the next 10 years? Important or very important? Off the charts at 94%. That's the values. What is your preference in funding for Parks and Recreation improvements or new recreation and park facilities, bond referendum, and corporate sponsors and partnerships? Sugar daddy. Those are easy for people to say because it doesn't truly affect their pockets directly, they feel. Development fees was something that was relatively high. So for the 74 households, again, that were represented here, fees were interesting. Which one of the following statements best describe how you feel park and recreation programs and facilities should be funded? And you select one, and basically it says mostly with tax dollars, and then the next mostly from user fees, and then the next one 100% from taxes with no funds coming from, how was that? No fees should be charged in the use of recreation facilities and programs. So, and there's usually like a line if you take a graph and you can almost link it, and you're almost in that line. At least the 74 people. But mostly with tax dollars is what people are saying is how they should be funded. And I would believe that when they say mostly from users' fees, is to offset that value they perceive in the community. Which one of the following statements best describes how you feel the city should fund maintenance of park and recreation facilities? Again, we're talking about the use of tax dollars. You can see how I started to put this little angle on there to see how it's going to fall, but that's relatively normal in a progression, least important. Surprisingly, a little stronger right now in both things that no fees should be charged. I don't know the 74 households. There are a variety of ways the city can finance parks and recreation facilities. Indicate how you feel about each option. Strongly support increased on, they feel non-residents need to pay. It almost feels like they need to pay a lot. But we did start to put like 8 cents sales quarter-cent sales tax, and looking in that way. And surprisingly, there was strongly support to somewhat support in there. A half cent sales tax was 40, almost 41% of the people said, yeah, I pay half. I pay 50 cents for every $100 I put out there. And then it went higher at a quarter cent, and it went lower for some reason, slightly lower for an eighth of a cent. But like I said, we have a small cross section. But that's. I have to look at some previous surveys and so forth and see, how a community this size. But I think again it goes to how are things valued in Belmont. Several improvements could be made to existing Belmont facilities, each improvement. Number one on this, in terms of somewhat important to very important for the type of facility that you need, 81% of the people feel it's adding gym space. 82% feel that it's important or very important to keep renovating playgrounds. Still 88% walking, jogging, and bicycle trails is very high. Expansion at existing parks and finding open space is important to these people. Adding swimming pools was still at 66%, which from my experience is higher than normal for cross-section. Add other water features such as splash pads or water parks, which went up to about 81% also. So there's support for it right now. Development of greenways and improved pedestrian travel forms at parks or to parks was really high at 92%. I think it's very important, or somewhat. And I think that kind of covers the survey right now. I know there's a lot of information to go through. My voice is giving out. So now what we can do is we've got to think of a date for the public meeting in late March, early April. And I have this little mic to see what days those are. And the importance of that meeting is there is twofold. And in the back of our text information that we gave you, the last page, I believe, we're talking about when we're going to do that. So that, we're going to have public community workshop meetings. We know we're going to do one in April, and then another one we're going to do sometime in June, I think it is. But at this one, what we'll be doing is the dog and pony show about why we're doing this plan, what a plan consists of, what the schedule is, so that the public kind of gets that information at that meeting. And then we're going to go through a workshop exercise, of which what we normally do is, depending on how many groups, is we try to set up with tables and try to get, we've had as many people as 20 people at a table, because we've had, I'll just say, 120 people at the meeting. And, sometimes space is difficult, but 5 or 6 groups, if you will, 20 people at a table. But the object here is to let people just dump. Sort of like we did with the focus groups, the same thing. Basically, we're going to ask them questions to work as a group, to do a brain dump and say, what is it with recreation that you feel is needed? And the object here is to have someone as a note taker and possibly to be their presenter later, and have them go through and like I said, in the 15 to 20 minutes, just document all the comments. We want a garden. We want a garden for peas. I want a splash pad, etc. Just get the list. then what we want to do is synthesize that and say, let's prioritize them. And what you find is the group dynamics usually come together and you form coalitions of how can I word my needs better to be all-encompassing. And we have those presented at the end. And we also ask about questions concerning how do you suggest we implement these and findings. And believe it or not, that's all done within about an hour. And everyone gets to go home. And we incorporate that information into the plan, give a quick synopsis in the document of what came out of it, see how it correlates with what we heard at the focus group meetings, what standards say, what our survey says, and we have recommendations. Hopefully they're not, oh, the rec center, great idea here in this, I'll just say, focus group. And in the survey, which we didn't hear, but it says, no, I don't think that's a good idea. We're hoping that doesn't happen. I've only had one instance where survey was completely off of every meeting or interview we did. And we think we got sabotaged in the survey. And it was a few years ago. This was in the Midwest that we did it. But the people who were running the survey said, we're going to have to do it again. Because statistically, and that's what they were paying for, it wasn't valid. So there were a couple things going on. So what we found is that the general consensus is usually there. If we find anomalies, it's to find out why. So,
sorry.
does that help?
It does.
Okay.
And just when you're thinking about scheduling this meeting, I looked it up really quick on my phone. Gaston County School Spring Break
Yep.
is the 19th through the 26th.
We'll be beyond that, because we were thinking beyond the 20, we always had said in our temporary schedule like the first week of April.
Okay.
But if we were able to do, and one, it's going to be where's the best place to do it? At Gaston College
We're going to try to do it
facility
at Gaston
there?
College.
And what we would need is, usually we need an instruction room that we can get maybe as many as 8 tables for people to work around.
Yeah, that'll work.
The bigger tables, the better. And we really encourage people to kind of draw on a map, list things on a big piece of paper, and then usually it's one person with good handwriting who gets to be the presenter and note taker. And we encourage all of you to be there. And we are there then to observe and maybe make suggestions about, sometimes you get, I won't say groups are butting heads, but they're so fixated on one agenda item, they forgot that if I'm sitting with 10 people with the same thoughts, that's done. Right? If 10 of us agree on what's the priority, why not move on to some other subject? And we try to suggest that. Okay, now that you've got, and this seems to happen a lot with athletic groups, they'll get together, they feel they've got their support, they're ready to make their stand, and we go, that's great. How about all the rest of the world? You got your, that's fine. It's wonderful, but I bet you do other things than just play ball. So it helps. So,
Gaston College is there for spring break the first week of March.
okay, so that doesn't affect us either. So maybe you need to find somewhere in the, what was it, the
19th through the 26th, or
Well, I know
28th for the weekend.
I cannot do it the 25th. I might be able to do it the 26th.
Well, 19th through the 26th, 28th would be out.
Gotcha.
Or- Yeah,
Out, yes, yes.
and the 15th is tax day, so that weekend might be kind of
No,
good
no.
for some folks
Well,
too.
we don't want to go that far.
So
Yeah,
you're
I'm
looking
hoping-
at, so are we looking at May then?
Yeah, I think, no.
Beginning of April?
Last week of March would be okay.
Okay.
And
Or
beginning of-
first week of
of
April,
April.
I think, helps everybody get through. So if
Okay.
you can find out, and I don't know whether Cassidy or who's going to be scheduling the location, but if we can find out, I know that I personally can't be involved with it on the 25th or the 22nd, that Friday, Monday.
22nd to the, and that's of March?
Right, March.
So you said March the 22nd?
Those are out for me.
Carl's saying from the 26th of March to the 5th of April.
God, why does my calendar keep
So what day is
going
it?
to June?
26th of March through April 5th.
Okay, so any of those dates. Okay.
One of those
Yeah,
days.
hopefully
Okay.
they have a date or, you know, an evening date open for
Okay.
the facility.
And what's the times we're talking?
6 is tough to get here, as you know.
Yeah,
So
6:30.
we had originally talked about, I mean, I wrote it in here 6:30,
Okay.
additional 30 minutes. And we found that even difficult when we did this in Pineville a couple years ago. I was surprised, because I live in that general area, and I was surprised that people were complaining they couldn't get there.
485.
That's all, there you go.
70 seconds.
But I was really surprised because, I mean, a lot of the people from that area, including myself, I know that if I'm leaving at roughly 5 o'clock, that's plenty, it's even at the worst. But I was very surprised. So then what that meant was there probably a lot of people who work uptown and, you know, they ride the
So
rail.
6:30 to 8?
Pineville.
6:30.
Yeah, 6:30.
Maybe
Okay, yeah.
one of your staff can contact the college and see in that
Yeah.
timeframe what days are available.
Yeah, we will.
And if any of you have any conflicts with that, you know, now that's a good time too. That's what we really want to punch out is who has conflicts and where do we get them.
I would say Wednesday nights, we should probably stay away. from.
Wednesday?
Yeah.
Stick it with a Wednesday? So that would be,
no Wednesday.
I think stay away from
Well,
Wednesdays.
I
like
think
a lot of
conflict would
people-
be the churches, so a lot of
Yeah.
people attend church on Wednesday night, so.
So probably Wednesday's then.
Okay, so I'll check on those dates in between that.
Okay.
And from a board, and can I ask about, so for the public forum, it is, from a board perspective, what would it be our role? To participate or to
I think.
be there?
That's a good, we've had members participate. I try to say that it's okay to participate as an advisory member if you're wearing more than one hat. Does that make sense? Similar to what Claudina did when you came to represent with Holy Angels. That makes sense. So I think when you're bringing that point of view, I think it's okay then. But typically, we have not had advisory committees. In most cases, they are not council, but they are committee chair, you know, recreation committees as opposed to advisory committee. So I would say no. But
I
boy,
definitely agree.
bring your brother, bring your sister, bring your kids.
No,
That's okay.
I can send that flare up, you know, that's, I don't think that's an issue.
Now, we had like former mayors show up that made it a little intimidating for some people, which I found interesting. You know, seeing those group dynamics. So I don't know. I don't know whether that happens in this community or not.
Well, once we get the date, we'll help spread the word.
Yeah, I'll start on that tomorrow.
Any other questions? If not, we'll move on. Move down the agenda. So, thank you, guys.
Oh, no problem. I know one thing is, you know, I did take a look at the Get It Road site.
Oh, Gateway Road, yeah.
Yeah.
And without doing a complete analysis real quick, but, you know, it's got some terrain issues and which would be drainage issues too. And for sports use in particular, It'd be difficult, costly to do, not that you couldn't do it.
Right.
But the average slope on some of the usable areas, so there's a ridge that goes through there that averages about 5% slope, which you can probably modify over that 400 and some feet that's in there. But 400 feet is really, when you think about it, the length of a soccer field with its perimeter safety boundaries. So it's not really that big. The width of the property is only about 530 feet or so, which is rather limiting too. So, you know, for sports, if you were able to line fields up, if you might say, along one side of a property line, bing, 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 you know, you could kind of string it along, but you'd hope that the property was flat, and that's not what the case is here. And my first assumption, just looking at it, is there's maybe 13 acres that you could develop, and it'd still be costly. So I think that property, maybe it becomes a different type of park if we use it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes. A lot of talking.
All right, up next, number 3 on the agenda is an update on Rocky Branch Park.
Rocky Branch Park, we had a few issues down there with trespassers, cutting trees and things like that, and making undocumented trails. We're working with PD on that situation. I'm gonna get a deer camera or two to put out there so we can be able to watch the area a little bit better. That's the problem that we've had at Rocky Branch. And on the right side, the volunteers, trailblazers, they are working on the trails a little bit more to make that a little bit better. One thing that we're supposed to have had, and the group couldn't come this week, was that presentation of the money for Rocky Branch to improve the trails out there. They should be coming at next month's Recreation Commission meeting, and we're talking about the donation that the guys is willing to offer, and then he's going to hopefully get a recommendation from you guys, and then take it to City Council for approval, and he's going to ask for additional money to get with that trail system out there.
I have a question. So can you elaborate a little more on the trees and things? So, you know, my property backs up to that park, and we hear chainsaws back there every once in a while, but I assumed it was the trail folks doing.
It hasn't been the trail folks. This is on the back end, on next to Stuart Cramer High School, on that end over there.
Okay, like that big open hill?
Over there.
So they're bringing chainsaws and cutting down trees?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah. That happened last Saturday. I know somebody called me at 8 a.m. 7 a.m. in the morning telling me that was going on.
What the heck were they thinking?
I don't know. We haven't been able to catch them yet, but we kind of got an idea to pin them down. But one thing that's come up that came out of all this is that we did not have the signage, especially for and also the four-wheelers on the property, which is illegal. We're in the process. We already put signs up out there saying no four-wheelers, and we're going to put these deer cameras and hope we'll be able to catch somebody.
You'll probably catch me walking around out there.
Well, that's all right. That part's all right. But I did walk the trail, and I did see some of the damage out there, and it's you can tell the damage. So yeah, we're trying to get that.
Well, I'll listen out for it too, so we can hear it from.
Yeah, we already contacted PD. Chris is the guy that'll be handling that investigation to the PD department. So we're working on it. Hopefully we'll have the cameras in next week.
Is that property fenced?
No, it's not fenced. No, it's not fenced.
I have a question, Zip, too. If the part of this park and rec plan is going to include the Rocky Branch Park,
right,
and we are allowing $50,000 to do this major plan, do you really think that the council will have any more appetite to give tax dollars for the Rocky Branch before this plan is done? Because, you know, Rocky Branch may cost more. It has to be part of this maintenance plan. So, I mean, I'd like the idea about a, public-private arrangement. I think that is the way to go, and I think it's wonderful that the Trail of the Blazers are really doing this. But don't you think it's a bit premature at this point? Because I don't know if the council would have an appetite to allow any more money
No,
without.
once the And what's holding us up with the Trailblazers are, they're trying to make a plan to give us details of exactly what they're gonna do and the cost estimate on that. So
Okay.
if they do, and what they want to do is ask council for half the money, they're gonna pony up 25,000, and they want the city to pony up 25,000. And when they're turning their plans that you guys will be reviewing at the next meeting, it is a specify exactly where that $50,000 is going. So I don't see it going over anything else besides what they gonna have on the paper. So we're waiting for them to bring that back, and they haven't submitted that to me yet.
They're working on their own master plan.
Yeah.
For what Rocky Branch needs and what
Right.
those funds would be spent on.
Yeah.
Shouldn't that be incorporated with this plan over here?
Well, it's a
Because
time
part of the
frame, it's a
plan.
time frame that this money is available also, so we're looking at that part of it too. Now, we could possibly lose the 25,000 if we wait on the master plan to be finished, because now we're talking the master plan to be finished in July, at the July council meeting or in the August council meeting. So that guy came forth, he wanted to do this as soon as possible on this. But like I said, like she says, it'll be up to the council to decide on that. They're gonna make the presentation to us, and then it'll go to the city council, so I'm sure they'll be aware of all this.
But I
Life
would
goes
say,
on.
so the 25,000 is like kind of in, they're asking city council to match it, even if city council were to say no, that 25,000 will be put into place. So
Right.
I guess potentially if city council said no and they've come with a master plan, we could take a look at their master plan and say, okay, these are the things they weren't able to accomplish that we feel like should be included. So it might be worth taking another look after that city council meeting.
Right. So that's a
So I also think
Second
that
bite
that
of apple.
proposal, I think that the Wilpert would look at it too and say, gee, this looks really great, so that if we can have their seal of approval too, then
But that would
be
mean they would
more
have to have
initiative.
that into the public meetings by the end of March.
Yeah.
Well, I was just
So
gonna
if we're
have
meeting
them-
with them in of March to hear their plan, they would only have 3 days to turn it around then for public review and stuff like that with
Well,
their.
if the plan is ready now, wouldn't it make an idea just to pass it by them and say, hey, this looks great? Because he's walked it.
Yeah, no, I hear,
Their
I'm
master
just
plan
thinking,
isn't ready. That's
Yeah,
why,
their
that's why they
master
haven't
plan,
come
yeah.
to
All right,
present
all right,
yet, because their
got it.
master
Yeah,
plan.
the master plan is written, nobody has seen it yet. Yeah.
Okay.
He keeps me up to date, he says he's gonna have it
Oh,
ready.
no, sure, yeah. But I
so-
think that
How much do we need, how many
Wilpert
votes do we need for quorum?
could help us, though.
We got it right. We're only missing 2 members. We're missing
And
Leanna London.
Brianna.
Brianna. It's the
So,
two
but
we need.
I think you had talked about maybe recusing.
I feel like that's probably the fair thing to do in this
Yeah.
situation, because my husband has been helping with this process, and I feel like it's probably not fair for me to be voting
So you're
on
still
that.
good, you got 5, you're still good.
Okay, well, I had thought about doing the same, just because the park is on my property and it backs
Well,
up
it's
to my property.
it's really not
and-
nothing to vote on right now anyway, because they're not making, you
We
will do
don't have
that
a
to the
plan.
next meeting.
Yeah. Oh, I know, but just for the next meeting,
next
if
meeting,
I'm,
so-
if I'm
We need
here,
to know.
I can't
Well, we
vote
still
and you
have
can't
5.
vote.
So
then
we
who's
still
gonna-
have 5,
okay.
if
Okay, cool.
Leanna
They both
comes.
have to be here.
Yeah.
Which would be
But-
fair.
Yeah, Leanna and Brew have to be here. Okay.
Yeah, just some, because I don't think it would be fair for me to vote when it would greatly impact my personal property values.
If you want to.
Will it make it go
run-
up?
Run through this right quick and finish
Yes,
up the
let's
rest
go.
of this. The other things, and just to update on some of the things that he had mentioned, he mentioned water fountains. We do have 2 new water fountains. We're gonna be putting one at the tennis court. The other one will go at the picnic shelf at Stowe. And we'll take that water fountain that's up there at Stowe right now, and we have the old 2 water fountains that we're gonna try to piecemeal together and put down at Rocky Branch Park as a water fountain. So we're gonna take those 2 old ones and rebuild those and take it down to Rocky Branch Park. That'll be done along with a changing station that we're doing down at Rocky Branch for that location down there. And the Trailblazers, they're doing a tremendous job with their volunteerism down there. So that's what we're planning on doing with water fountains. And I know we still got a shortage at Reed and some of the other facilities, but we're working on those also. Those water fountains are not cheap, so we gotta do plan and step by step on doing this. So we're trying to get Stowe out of the way, because that one of that Stowe is dangerous because it's leaking. It's leaking water right around that picnic shelter up there real bad. And we don't replace it, I don't know how many times trying to get parts for it, and you just can't. So we're just gonna see can we piecemeal those 2 and put them down at Rocky Branch Park. And the tennis court update, as soon as the weather clears up, they're gonna be starting working on the tennis courts over there, so that's what the holdup is with all this rain, man, who knows on that one. I'm missing the deer cameras at Rocky Branch. And one thing we're gonna try to do on the survey to try to get more participants, we're gonna send out something to the schools, with a link. We're gonna do that to the elementary schools and to the middle schools with a link on there telling them to go in and please fill out the survey. We'll probably get that out probably Monday. We'll leave the survey open probably another month on that, trying to collect more data from that. And we're reaching out to the homeowners association and getting the survey, that link out to them also. So we're trying to get a pool of more people. Hopefully we can have more than the 350 that we had for the feasibility study. Hope we can outdo that number.
I can send it to Eagle Park,
Okay.
to the communications person there. Is it on social media?
Yeah, it is.
It is.
It is on
Exactly.
social media, yeah. And we're slowly collecting data. This company, like you said, it's just stopped there, but it's slowly trickling back in now. We had some walk-ins today that come into the Fort Center and fill out some forms. So we are getting people on
Would
that.
you want Belmont Abbey College?
That'd be fine. Anybody, yeah, they can fill out some. So we'll try to get that out to everybody. Just have them contact us.
Yeah, well, okay.
I know college students would be an interesting person.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that'd be interesting.
And one note, we did hire a staff person that's gonna be basically working on the weekends as a naturalist. That's what her degree is in. So we're gonna try to utilize Rocky Branch Park a little bit more for educational,
nice.
walking for trails and things like that. And also she's certified with kayaks and swimming and all that stuff.
Nice, yeah.
So and she comes from the Latta Nature Center. I don't know if they call it plantation anymore. Latta Nature Center. But she comes from
Oh,
over there.
Ladder Center, yeah.
Yeah, so she comes from over there, so what we're gonna try to do is get a bio on her and put it on the web to let me know that we got somebody with those standards that can be able to help us out.
That's
I think
great.
that'll be some new programs that we can offer for us going into the STEM and with the education aspects of it. She should be able to reach out to schools and things like that to be able to help us out.
That's
So I think
great.
that'd
Yeah,
be good
that's
for
great.
her. So I think that
What's her
would
name?
be well. Tammy Steen, S-T-I-N, S-T-E-I-N. Stein, Tammy Stein, yeah.
Okay.
And her first day will be Monday. And we're having a Lake Wilder Marine Commission meeting here Monday night at 7 o'clock. And she'll be attending that because they got a segment on there about kayaks on the water, so she's gonna be attending that. So hopefully she'll be able to make contact with those guys and be our gateway for the river and for the trails. Also trying to help us with the app too that we're trying to make for the city, that we can be able to link some of these things together to help people to follow the trails, water trails, and also land access apps and stuff. As far as our programs and events, we're still in the process of doing our soccer registration. It's going pretty good. We have not opened up Gant Ball Field yet. We're not scheduled to do that till the beginning of next month. We try to let those fields rest for about 2 months, so it won't be a lot of maintenance damage on them. So we'll be opening those up pretty soon. I know he said that he was surprised not to see anybody, but that's the reason why, because we don't want to overuse those fields and cause more of a maintenance issue than before, because we had that issue last year with overuse of the soccer fields. So we're not opening those back up until probably March the 1st, when practice begins with soccer. And that's really about all I have.
Stowe Pavilion?
Oh, I'm glad you mentioned that. Glad you said something on that. That's the centerpiece right there. I've taken this round to Adrian and some of the city staff. And
The center one?
The center one.
Okay,
Is
it's
what
beautiful.
they're proposing for Stowe Park Pavilion.
Yeah.
Right now I'm getting cost estimates.
Yeah, it's really
So
pretty.
nice.
I like it.
So what's the timeline for that?
I got to have a budget in by, before July 1st, so it can go into hopefully next year's budget. And if that's approved, then we'll start on that project in July, if that is approved.
Sorry, I'm being nosy.
Oh, that's all right.
Superior Shelter.
Yeah.
I want a pavilion in my backyard.
So that's why we are with the pavilion. Hopefully, I forgot the cities that have this type of pavilion. I think it might have been Indian Land. It was a nice one in Danville, Virginia. There's one at Wake Forest, Branch Park in Wake Forest. And I forgot what other locations are. But I was talking to a couple of people, a couple of professionals in the business. They were saying something like this would be real nice.
Okay.
But if we could add a changing station or a little room or something beside it, would be even better. So I'm just gonna include that as an addition to this. And I don't know if we can even do anything like that down at Stowe parking lot, but it would be something small, 10 by 10, if we did anything like that, and maybe have an air conditioner in there, because of how we do stuff in the summer, it's so hot. And they said that would be great, you would attract a lot of bands and stuff if we would do that. So just something to look at, not saying that we can actually do it, but try to figure out when we bring in a designer to design this thing, because we're going to have a designer to come in. You see this thing was raised, the raised stage, so you're going to have an ADA ramp. That's one thing you're going to have, and that's for this facility right here, because you can't do it on the existing pad we had. So we do something like that to be code. You got to have an ADA ramp beside it. So I'm getting estimates on the ADA ramp, electrical cost, and for somebody to draw up the plans for this. So I should have those probably by the next meeting.
So that's not a kit that you just buy and plop in there, it's customized for your
space? The upper part is a kit up here, that part is.
Everything down below would have to be, we'd have to do that. So you'd have to go in and look at the pad and the whole 9 yards,
Okay.
everything is there.
Yeah, you have to have the pads and have somebody come in and actually draw in where the ADA ramp would go and the brick and everything else.
Yeah. I would assume you're tearing up all the concrete paddings there now?
No,
Put that in brick?
hopefully it just go on top of that pad we already have, which may reduce the cost.
It's gonna do brick over the top of it?
Yeah, and we're talking about just extending that. Right now, it's a 30 by 40 pad.
Yeah.
You can only go 5 on this side.
Yeah.
And 20 this way is all you can add in there. So that'll make it from a 30 to a 40 to a 50 by 60 pad, which will probably be big enough for us. Because you don't want to go any further, because last year when they did the drainage system down there, so you don't want to tear out what you're already putting in. So that's why you can't expand it anymore. But that'll be a pretty good adequate size of shelter pavilion.
It's a nice looking pavilion.
So I should have some cost
That
estimates on that.
showcased,
Yeah.
that would definitely showcase that amphitheater and the parking lot.
And having a sponsor, and if we do this and approve this, and maybe we could take this out to, and maybe get a sponsor for somebody to sponsor this event, like a Claremont Health or our Atrium Health Pavilion up there.
You need to spread the love around. We got a recreation center, we got a aquatic center.
Just throw it out there. That's all I have. I don't have anything else. I'm trying to think of anything else that's going on.
Any other business? Nobody else? All right, well,
Move to adjourn.
I'll second. Everybody good? Yep.
Get ready for the ball game. Ball game's at 9 o'clock.
Ooh, it's a late one.
Yeah,
Yeah, they got that one. Yeah, everybody be dragging tomorrow at work.
I know my little boy be crying, wanting to stay up.
Sorry.
Very, very interesting.
Yeah, that is really nice. Top
That's
notch.
nice.
It took me a long time to find that one.
Yeah, hopefully that'll work out.
Yeah, hopefully this thing is real.
You're really good.
When you find people that's numbers crunchers.
I think we could have waited on all that detail.
I know, that's a
Yeah.
I thought it was very interesting to see where we're at, because I'm kind of like, okay, I wonder where we're at with that survey, what it's showing.
He said 74, I thought we had about 90 something.
It's not shocking me, nothing said.
He said, your version is on point. Yeah. I think we got a little bit more than 74, he said, just listening to him, but everything